Welcome to Far Out with Faust. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm sitting here with someone I greatly admire, Josh Trent. So, Josh has spent the last 18 years as a trainer, a traveler, a facilitator, and a researcher, doggedly in pursuit of the physical and emotional intelligence and experiences that humans need to thrive in our modern world. He's host of the one and only Wellness Force podcast. That's one of the podcasts that inspired me to start Far Out with Faust. If you haven't heard of the Wellness Force podcast, this epic 400 highly informative interviews with some of the most renowned and respected names in health and wellness spans back 5 years. Incredible interviews. Wellness Force is a global collective dedicated to gathering and mastering knowledge and practices for humans to embody the greatest expression of themselves amid the din and chaos of our present day. So, Josh, thank you so much for beaming in, man. I appreciate you making time. It's been a long time coming, and I'm thrilled to have you on the show, brother. Welcome.
Wow, that was really cool. Thank you for having me. And that was an awesome intro. I was like loving the words you used to describe that. And actually, yeah, it's 2015, man. So it's 6 years,
6 years now.
years of
Wow.
podcasting. So it's been the journey.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, man, I was watching your videos from 5, 6 years ago, man, and what a journey it's been just to see your evolution and listen to you back then and then listen to you, in these most recent interviews. And dude, I can't find a single podcast of yours that I have not found myself engrossed and learning from. And that is
Thanks, man.
fucking incredible considering how many podcasts you have under your belt. So, you know, I take my hat off to you, man. It's awesome to have you on the show.
Well, I'm excited to be here. And God, when I look back, I'm thinking the person I was when I started, it's like there's tenets of him, but the interests and the passions and the pivots and all the different angles that I've explored, I feel like that's the only path as humans, if we're being honest, because how we start things is not always how we finish them. They can be even better than how we started them. So, wow, what the journey. I've been reflecting on that actually a lot lately. And
Yeah.
when I first started, it was all about like empowering people through wellness technology, which I still believe wellness technology has positive aspects. But I do believe now that we're in this nexus of physical and emotional intelligence, which is fed by the spiritual.
Yeah. It's like all roads lead back to Rome. Is that what they say? And
Yeah.
it's
If
a
we're Rome,
spiritual, yeah.
if consciousness is Rome, then yes.
Yeah, that's it. And it's a spiritual journey we're on. So, you know, I'm, I was, I've been curious about this since I discovered you last year was when I first discovered you. And there's usually a moment or an event and that is a pivot for people who end up on this path, especially a path such as yours. And so I would love to hear about if there was one thing or, what was the culmination of things that kind of put you on your journey.
Mm. Well, I believe that people make choices from pain or pleasure. I'm no different because I'm human, like everyone, like you. And for me, the real genesis of Wellness Force was exploring my own pain and asking my pain why it was there. And so, to pull the e brake and go way back, I was born premature. I was less than 5 pounds when I came into the earth, stripped from my mother's womb, put into an incubator for 10 days. And so, for whatever reason, my soul, if you look at Eastern medicine, they believe that we choose our parents. And so I have more developed from that spaciousness of me choosing my parents rather than something happening to me. I believe that I chose them because my dad did not necessarily have emotional intelligence. He grew up with a father that wasn't necessarily emotionally intelligent to him. My mom struggled with bipolar when I was young, and I found a drug called food, and I gained a lot of weight. And I think the majority of the first 10 years of me being on earth set the foundation for all the later healing and discovery and exploration that I would do around emotional and physical and spiritual and mental. And that led me to find a really dark night of the soul moment when I was 21, 22 years old. I was drinking at a party, which a lot of people do. It's a behavior that is encouraged, actually, is to go drink and go party on the
Oh
weekends
yeah.
and disconnect. And
I mean, we
I love,
send our kids to college and to binge drink. I mean, that's what
for
they,
sure.
you know.
Right. And there's a reason for that, is because we are all dying to live. And the real journey of this life, I think, is to let all the parts of our ego die so that we can actually live. And I think someone else has mentioned this, so it's not my quote, but the real quality of life is depicted on your agreement to let the parts of yourself die so you can really live. And the parts of yourself, what I mean by that is ego. So I still, to this day and probably forever, will continue to look in the mirror and be like, okay, what parts of my ego need to die so that I can be more loving and live more? And that's really the journey that it took me down to find fitness. I was a fitness trainer for 10 years. I left the fitness space. I was dealing with a lot of dark inside of me, but I was shining light on other people, right? So I was changing other people's lives, just like I tried to change my mom's life and my dad's life. And that beating your head against the wall, you'll get bruised with the reality that you can't change anyone. You can only
Yeah.
change yourself. And that led me to go to corporate America, commit spiritual suicide, wake up every day and go, I'm not harnessing my potential. I'm not fulfilling my purpose. And I got the gift of being fired in 2014, at the end of 2014. And in that same span of time, in about 6 months or so, I checked my mom into a mental home, broke up with a woman that I had been living with, and got fired. So it was the ultimate
Wow.
hero's journey moment where I felt God push me against the wall, and I was crying over a golf course one night in Carlsbad. And I was like on my knees, and I just said, God, like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I'm not ever going back to being someone else's slave, to working for someone else again. Like, I'll do whatever it takes. And honestly, I would rather die than not live my dream. And that's where Wellness Force was born.
That's awesome, man. That's crazy. We have, I mean, I had a feeling about this, but we have a lot more in common than I even thought we did. That's incredible. And to hear that about your mom, I mean, that's tough, man. Um, Dealing with that. So, but wow. But thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
It's one of the hardest lessons to realize, especially with loved ones, when you begin to have a spiritual awakening, and you really kind of get caught up in trying to change the people you love, because it becomes very clear as you start to look out what about them they could be doing better. And it's also the easiest way to be distracted from the work that still needs to be done on the self.
Yes.
And so we beat our heads
Yes.
against the wall, like you said, trying to change our loved ones. And the only path that's possible is through changing the self, and then embodying that in your life. So I hear you and I feel you, man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. And it makes me grateful as well, because even in every human being's darkness, there is light trying to emerge. I just did a vision quest, and what's coming up for me when you're sharing is one of my mentors, my guides on the quest. There was two main guides, Tim and Mark. And Mark said, in a football stadium, if you had a massive 60,000 seat football stadium and you shined a candle in the blackness of night in that stadium, every single seat would be able to see the light of that candle.
Hmm.
And I believe that's the truth for all of us, because darkness cannot contain light. The minute you bring light to darkness, it's so present, and it's so currently available to everyone, that to deny it would be really the mirror that we all deny within ourselves of the lightness we have. In other words, there's darkness out there. We all deal with stress. We all deal with ego. We all deal with the darkness in the football stadium. But if we can just freaking choose to just
Yeah.
snap one light and then another light and then another light, it can illuminate change.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, man. And it's challenging for me. And I love to look out onto the city and say, that's one of the reasons why it's become very challenging for me, especially as of the last year and a half. But
Yes.
I also know deep down that that's my hurdle to overcome. That's my very specific challenge, is being here for however long I have to be here, and overcoming myself, and not being a reaction to what's happening. I can speak my truth, but I can still shine a light. And that's I struggle every day to keep that fire going, and find the balance between, you know, embodying the light and also speaking my truth, because, you know, I know you get passionate about what's happening, and I have a habit of getting outspoken and passionate about what's happening too. So yeah, it's very well said. You
Thanks.
know,
Thank you,
I
man.
love the candle in the stadium. It's very great.
I like stories and analogies because everybody gets them. I find that we can all become victims of intellectualization. It's a show, the solo cast that I'm doing next week. It's so easy for us to get caught up in the intellectual because really the greatest truth is simple and the greatest truth is easy to understand. Now, just because it's simple and easy to understand doesn't mean that it's easy to execute or easy to live.
That's for
But
sure.
every child can understand why a kite flies. It's because it's fun, and they put a kite up in the sky and it flies. But a child doesn't need to know the airspeed, the velocity, the angle, the scientific rationale behind why a kite flies. All the child knows is that the kite flies, and
Yeah.
we become so wrapped up making science a god and trying to intellectualize everything that we lose the forest through the trees. It happens to all of us, and it's not about shaming anyone. It's just part of the human experience.
Yeah. No, you're, man, I mean, you're channeling me. You're yeah, I mean, I believe me, I understand what you're saying. And it's crazy because, you know, science is like water. Science is literally like water.
Yes.
It's like the ocean. It's always moving. It's always changing.
Mm.
And so to think that, and to convince so many people that you can make it this one thing, that's a feat. You know, that alone is an incredible mass. I mean, I don't know what to call it besides hypnosis. You know,
Hmm.
but the scale to which they have found a way to do it is mind-boggling. But let
Yes.
me, speaking of sticking to the light, you know, I wanted to ask you, and you know, I have we have this saying in acting that I know you'll like. It's with each breath comes salvation, and it's because actors tend to get in trouble, and when they get in trouble, they hold their breath. And of course, that's a sure way to get in more trouble. So, and I know that you have extensive experience, and you've created a program which teaches people how to use the breath to free themselves from chronic stress, among other things. And I would love to hear more about it.
So yeah, breathe, breath, and wellness came from me dealing with my own anxiety and really my own disassociation. Um, it's so easy for myself to go out and research and get the best information from the world class people. And, you know, I have my bunch of books over here on the bookcase in the studio. And I am on a journey to have peace. And that journey is so contextual to my ability to be humble and to reach out to spirit and to be honest about what I truly need to heal and what I truly need for peace. And all of us, I don't care who you are, 7 or 70, manic or balanced, integrated or not, embodied or totally out there. It's funny, we're on a podcast that's talking about things that are far out. The one thing about breath work that I can say to everyone and why it led me to it is because there's a phrase that I say, and it's se posso respirare, posso scegliere. And what that means in Italian is if I can breathe, I can choose. And that came to me in 2016 when I did this really powerful breath work with Mark Divine, who is the founder of Seal Fit and Unbeatable Mind. And I was laying on the floor with a bunch of military special ops people, and I'm crying. You know, I'm not crying like, but I'm crying like there's just water coming out of my eyes. I'm like, what the hell is going on right now? Because all we had done was warrior breathing, which is very similar to Wim Hof. I mean, we're really not reinventing breath work. We're just packaging and promoting it and leading it and holding a space for it in a sacred way. And that moved me so much. It was so profound in 2016 for me to have that experience that I just felt a peace that mushrooms and psychedelics and talk therapy could really never bring me. I never felt that kind of peace before.
Wow.
And that led me on a 3-year journey, traveling to Thailand, doing a month intensive, going to Sedona and working with Anahata Ananda and shamanic healing, and then also Gwen Payne with breath as prayer, and going to Costa Rica and working with Christian Minson and interviewing Dan Brule and breath mastery, and just like getting all the best wisdom I possibly could from people across the world to synthesize it and make it really digestible for the everyday human so they can get the benefits of breath work. Because I found, Faust, that there's so many people that are performing breath work or facilitating breath work, and a lot of what they're doing is, yes, they have good intentions, but the words and the language they're using are so esoteric and so woo-woo that they really can't meet the average person at their deepest need. And I took it upon myself to meet everyone at their deepest need without using this esoteric language so that people could trust it. And that's where Breathe, Breath, and Wellness was born. It's a 3-week experience. It's a guided program. We go over the 3 fundamentals of breathing, which are acute, chronic, and meditative. Actually, it's acute, chronic would be like more catharsis, and meditative. So those are the 3. Acute meaning like, I'm on a stage, what do I do? Like you're talking about acting.
Right.
So in the acute phase, we all need strategies to breathe when it matters most. In the meditative, it's proactive wellness breathing, where we're really cueing our nervous system over the course of time to trust the breath, to trust ourselves. And then, of course, with the cathartic breathing, that last phase, it's about releasing trauma. And I don't believe that people should just run right to the catharsis. I think people should spend
that could
some time
be
in the other two. So that's where the program was born. That's what it's all about. It's breathwork.io. And it's a passion of mine because, God, if I didn't have that, there's like no way that I could hold myself to the standard that I believe I'm worthy of. And that's for all of us, like we use our breath to clear stress because stress is just energy, and we need stress, but we also have to balance where if we get too much stress, then it's distress. Eustress is good, cold therapy, heat shock proteins, exercise. But if we go too far to the other side, Faust, and we go to this place where we become really victimized by our amygdala and victimized by the default mode network, which I can go into, like, man, we just get lost. We just get lost, and we wake up and we're 50 years old and nothing in our life is working. And so breath can be a guidepost to keep us going to the North Star.
It really can. And what happens when we habitually deal with stress, chronic stress, it is that it really does a number on the body. It's not just mental and emotional. There is no separation between these things. And so you have the human body breaking down way too early, than it should. And chronic stress is a huge factor in that, in people's lives. And, these techniques, I've been learning breath work and practicing meditation for years. And these techniques have absolutely changed my existence, every part of it. And I'm gonna, I haven't had a chance to explore your program yet, but I'm definitely gonna go on the site and check it out because you've collected knowledge from so many places, and created something that is very digestible, it seems, and I'm very interested in it. So absolutely, man. That sounds awesome. And what a journey you've had all over the place, man. We could have a podcast just on your travels. It'd be crazy.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. And it's for everyone. It really is. Like everyone can breathe, because if you weren't breathing, you would not be here. Yet we find in the wellness world that so many people are running to ceremonies, running to ayahuasca, running to mushrooms, running to ketamine. And I'm not here to demonize those things. They have a time and a place. But depending on someone's level of consciousness and their ability to hold pain or to hold trauma, it can be actually more traumatizing for someone to go to these alternative methods than it would be just for them to learn how to properly breathe. And I believe that breathwork is a safe, yet just as powerful, just as potent modality as these psychedelics, because psychedelics, they're very abused. I've had my own run-in with a splintering of the psyche. I had to be healed by a mentor because I had entity possession, and it's not something that you want to take lightly. But the reality is, people need healing right now. People need healing. And so how do they get that healing? Well, there's many tools, and I think breath is at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I think you're absolutely right. I have friends who have, gotten into plant ceremonies through my interest in them and my traveling to them, and I see the effect that it has on them, and it's so stunted. Thankfully it hasn't been traumatic, but overall, because the foundation isn't there, it's
Mm,
you see that it's almost like this a flower just getting a little bit of water, and just it has this moment where it becomes green, but then it's cut off again because there's no continuation of that kind of those nutrients in the water that it needs. It's hard for me to see, because I'm like, yeah, I encourage them to do whatever is going to kind of plant that spiritual seed for them, but at the same time I'm like, man, I encourage them and I send them things. And I actually sent one of the friends I'm talking about your podcast just last week. I was listening to it and it resonated so much with me, and thinking of him and his situation. I
mm.
was listening to, it was your podcast with Connor Beaton,
Oh yeah.
Shadow Work.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible podcast, incredible interview with him. I mean, he reminds me of someone who I had on my podcast. These guys definitely speak in the same language. You would love the guy who I had on my podcast. Actually, I had him on twice, but his name is Ted Wallach,
Mm.
and he runs a men's circle, and he's in Stockholm. But yeah, I mean, you would love him. But Connor is so. I was going to ask you about Connor anyway, because the podcast was so profound and resonated so much, and I'm just going to jump into it because here we are talking about him anyway. But just for our listeners, Connor talks about shadow work, right? And he specifically
Yeah.
gets into men and this thing that we're taught about, not talking about what it's like being a man. It's just something that is, it's I want to say it's cultural, but it's pretty global. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like
Mm-hmm.
this masculine notion that I, it's like, it feels like it's in our genes sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't talk about what it's like to fail or to feel insecure, or to feel sad. It's just like, and when I was listening to you and Connor talk about that, I thought about, you know, the moment we start doing that and teaching our children that and modeling that behavior, that's the moment when we begin to teach them different personas, and that they should be some way in public and another way really, how they're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's that separation that happens, and I remember growing up, and having, kind of, I had a father who was, yeah, very free with his hands. And, I remember when he would catch me, which was rare. As I got older, I got quicker. But when he would spank me or hit me with his belt or whatever, I remember separating, you know, kind of having out of body experiences and seeing myself from like the ceiling,
Mm.
and then hiding how bad I was hurt, because afterwards he would then be, it was like the only time he was really like affectionate was after that. After he would feel bad, he would feel guilty about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would come over and he was kind, and so it was fucked up, obviously, really fucked up. But, um, we create these different personas, and a lot of time they come from trauma. And what Connor talks about is like, we're not teaching our children then how to, learn from their pain,
Yeah.
and pain having its own intelligence. Can you tell me what else you learned from Connor, and like what, because that was such an amazing podcast for me to listen to.
This is great because just this morning I did 30 minutes of sauna, and then I did 4 minutes of ice this morning, and I was just sitting there. It's hot here in Texas, and I was just letting my skin warm up from the heat. And I got hit this morning really hard with exactly what you're talking about. And that is, I look at my own father and his lots of issues with anger. I don't remember like physical abuse, but I remember at a very young age being with him and watching him, and I could tell that he was hurting really bad. And I think if we were honest as a society, most men from that generation, so I'm 40, he's I think almost 70, or I'm not exactly sure how old he is. He's almost in his 70s. But that generation, they did not have a seat at the table of emotional intelligence. It just wasn't fucking there.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So let's just let that be known, right? So it's the distance from illusion to self is the miles that I choose to walk back home. So when trauma happens, we have to leave the body because we have to have some kind of sense making about why the trauma occurred. And so if I'm in my deepest heart hurting, but that hurting doesn't have a place to be expressed, well, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transmuted.
Right.
So there is nothing for me to do with that energy other than to move that energy. And so why do many contemporaries and ancient masters say the same thing, Faust? I'm going to quote Alan Watts. All the parents and all the people in our society that continue to teach their children to grow up, get a good job, follow the rules, suppress your pain, suck it up, don't be a pussy, get back out there, be a man, be strong. What he says is it's all retch and no vomit. Everyone's going, but no one ever throws up the unhealthy behavior, the lack of presence, the lack of emotional intelligence. And here's why. This is like, I've never talked about this on a show. The insight that I get this morning is this. Forgiveness is the most potent tool in the universe. Yet, in order for us to embody forgiveness, we have to be able to learn from the wisdom of our own pain. And that right there is like really the construct of the Matrix. Because we are all wounded. We have all been through shit. Yours seems very severe. Many people have severe. And you know what? It doesn't even matter whether it's lowercase t trauma or capital trauma, capital T trauma. All of these traumas, they all affect our nervous system in the same way. And so to go way back to your initial question, what can we learn from our pain? Why is pain an intelligent teacher? What intelligence does pain have for us? Pain is the intelligence that allows us to become courageous enough to embody forgiveness. But what happens is we have a society that doesn't fortify that. We have porn and Amazon and shopping and shitty food and media narratives that pull everyone away from their center. And so we are living in a world where everyone is a victim, everyone is disempowered, unless they choose to learn from the pain teacher and to have the courage to embody forgiveness. And I still, to this day, am working on many of these things. Now, look, I'm aware of them. We're talking about them. I'm not bypassing them.
Right.
I'm not perfect, but I'm doing my work on a daily basis. And that was what I was feeling to your question this morning, that all of us can really take stock in.
Yeah.
If I can have the courage to express with my breath, so if I can, and we talk about this in the Breathe program, if you can breathe through your belly like a balloon and breathe back into your kidneys and keep your shoulders down and breathe like a balloon through your belly and breathe horizontally instead of vertically, you then can have the choice to express the pain you're feeling. And when you express the pain you're feeling, that is the forgiveness process beginning. So the way I believe this process works is you first allow yourself to feel it. You don't mash it down. You don't go and smoke a cigarette or eat a chocolate cake or watch porn or buy something you don't need or yell at your spouse or beat your kids or make up a story about how your neighbor hates you. You just cut that shit out and you be an adult and you take 6 massive deep breaths through your belly, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And then from that place, you actually admit what's hurting. You just be like, okay, I'm really hurt right now because I had a memory or I had an event, and that event made me feel something. And I'm really upset about it. And so first you do that. It could be a day, could be a week, could be a month, could be a year. Who knows? Sometimes for different people, whether you're an HSP or not, these emotions can really get into the nervous system. Then from that place, you develop the courage to express your hurt to the person that potentially may have done it to you, for you. regardless of their response, regardless of their level of emotional intelligence, regardless of how you're received, then you can actually give them the gift of forgiveness. And you can say either physically, verbally, or to yourself, I totally understand now why this person did that to me. It fucking hurt. I'm really hurt about it. But with my breath, I'm going to choose to forgive them. And this is where the rubber meets the road on the quality of our lives, because anger and resentment and a lack of forgiveness are the biggest determinants of our health deteriorating. Our health deteriorates because we don't forgive. And we don't forgive because we don't have the tools or the awareness, and we never had that forgiveness process modeled to us. And so that's where it all begins, Faust, is like these things happen.
Yeah.
Our pain is there to teach us something. Can you pull the wisdom from why your dad beat you, from why my dad was suffering in his own pain, and he would have very similar things where he would lash out and be angry and say terrible things, and then he would come back around and he'd be like, hey, I bought you a watch.
Yeah.
Right? But really what kids need and what adolescents need and what all human beings need is we need vulnerability with each other.
Yeah.
To say, hey, that really hurt me. Can you share with me why you did that?
Yeah.
I bet you if men and their fathers or men with their sons could have that kind of conversation, the world would be a totally different place. But we get caught up by not breathing, just like you talked about with actors. What's the first thing that happens when we're in sympathetic? We hold our breath.
Yep.
And when we hold our breath, whether it's a fight with my partner or whether it's a business contractor that's causing me pain, if I can breathe, I can choose. If I can breathe, I can choose. And we start that forgiveness process from the breath, allowing ourselves, giving ourselves permission. After the permission comes the processing, comes the emoting or the expressing. And then the forgiveness process begins, regardless of the other person or the external portion giving us what we want. This is really just about sometimes admitting in life things happen. We don't know why. Sometimes it could be karmic. Sometimes it could be just absolutely fucking unexplainable. But at the bottom of that is peace. And that kind of peace can be trusted. You can have power from that place.
Absolutely. And on the other side of that piece is a lot of joy. And, I encourage people, and I tell my loved ones who, I mean, we've all been there, I think, I can say right now that I definitely do not, I don't have anyone in my life who I have, quote, forgiven, yet I don't, yet I quietly don't want anything to fucking do with, you know what I mean? Like I don't, that list is clear for me, but I know a lot of people who, they have this list and they're like, yeah, I forgive them. They can fuck themselves. But, I'm like, well, that's okay. Maybe you can go one step further. I feel, I mean, if you've ever seen a video of, and this is extreme, obviously, and this is really hard for people to wrap their minds around, but when you see it, it just, I mean, it takes your heart and it just jolts it with lightning. It's so incredible when you see the parent or the sibling forgive the victim's killer, when you see them embrace, there's God so quickly, it's like, it's almost unthinkable, but yet it happens. That level of forgiveness happens. And it's rare, but my God, the healing that takes place on a multi-dimensional level when something like that happens is incredible. I just remember all the times I've seen that rare instance where that kind of extreme forgiveness happens, and I think it's so important. I think it can be measured.
I haven't found one case, not one, whether it's clients that I work with in business or personal or breathwork or interviews, not one. And I'm open to this changing, but truly I have not found one case where whatever egoic issues a human being is dealing with, whatever pain a human being is dealing with, their parents, either mom or dad, dealt with the exact same thing. And guess what? Their grandparents dealt with the exact same thing. And guess what? Their great-great-grandparents dealt with the exact same thing. It's all retch and no vomit. The only way we can heal this is if we're willing to pay the sins of our fathers and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers. That's it. That's it. Because a lot of times, like if you look at the work of Mark Wolin, he wrote It Didn't Start With You. Really, we did 2 interviews really in depth on generational trauma. sometimes we can use our intellect and we can, like, I'm sure people are scribbling down, like, what did Josh say about the forgiveness process? It's great. You can scribble that down and it's a beautiful start. But to actually do it, you're going to have to get a little bloody.
Yeah, you can.
You're going to have to practice it and realize that you threw the forgiveness process out the window and you didn't breathe and you held your breath, and you're going to have to go back to the well and drink the water again. The reason why generational pain doesn't change is because the courage that's needed to forgive and to heal is so vast and so immense that unless you are really chosen by God or chosen by the faith that God has given you, or believe in yourself so much to experience the discomfort of not just your pain, not just your forgiveness, but the forgiveness of 3, 4, 5, 6 generations behind you. That's why things don't change. That's why people don't change, is because it is so embedded in our epigenetics. If you really want to break it down to a biological piece, in our genetic coding, you know, our A's, C's, T's, and G's, which is a whole nother thing. Do you ever get tripped out? Like, my son was born from a microscopic sperm
Right.
that you can't even see with your eyes on the tip of my finger. Get the fuck out of
It's
here.
so
Like,
crazy,
how could
dude.
anyone say that God or higher intelligence doesn't exist?
That's what
Get
I
the
mean.
fuck out of here.
The more science
So,
I learn, the more I'm like, are you kidding me?
yeah,
There's a God.
there's a God. It's not a bearded dude in the sky.
No,
It's not a gatekeeper at the
no,
gates of heaven. It's
not a
not like that.
judgment
No,
thing.
but there is something. We all know there's
Yeah.
something like that, that we, when we connect to that, it wants to. Consciousness and God and higher intelligence, in my opinion, it's all coming from the same thing. And I learned this from my mentor, Paul Chek. He said that essentially there's a 0 point field. And so in the 0 point field, there is nothing, which is no thing, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And from that place, God, spirit, higher intelligence in the 0 point wants to experience life in every single way possible, which is hard to swallow, but it's also the reality of, why does a school bus of children get killed in an accident?
Right.
Why does a plane crash? Why does a 13-year-old child die?
Yeah.
Why do great people get killed? Like, we don't understand these things because they're not meant to be understood.
Right.
They're meant to just be surrendered to and accepted. And so that 0 point field creates exactly what you and I are talking about. And that is this process of me being either chosen or choosing myself. It could be two. I don't know. I haven't made my mind up about this yet.
Right.
It's either someone is chosen by God, God's self, because God wants to experience that healing process in the unique point of consciousness, or I choose because I feel worthy enough to choose to heal the pain. And I'll be honest, like, it doesn't come easily. Like, we have all these people that are just like, oh, life is this big flowy, you know, life is abundant, and it's bypassing. We're in a
A
culture of
lot of
bypassing.
bypassing.
A lot of bypassing. Now, look, I'm not saying that you can't have abundance and you can't have flow and you can't have freedom. All those things are beautiful, but those things need to be earned in a way, because what blocks those things from being present is our lack of courage, our lack of intelligence to know how to begin the forgiveness process and to embody forgiveness.
And what happens is the habitual avoidance of it, you know, it's like anything that you put off and put off, it becomes further and further away. And you know, I have an identical twin brother, and I joke around a lot and say and tell him that every podcast I do is for him.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of truth to that statement,
How
you
so?
know.
What do you mean?
I just mean, like, you know, we're on different paths, and I try to encourage his healing journey, which he has not embarked on. It's been, you know, he's dabbled intellectually in the concepts that I try to embody and that I've gotten into and that have changed my life. But that's about as far as he goes. And you know, there is no practice there. I mean, there's a some part of him that knows that he would benefit from it, but you know, he's been escaping for a long time in many
Mm.
ways. And so, you know, you run long enough and you forget why you're even running. And there's a lot of things that, you know, it just, I can sense, he's my identical twin. I should add that. You know, I can sense
Who came out first?
he did
Okay.
17 minutes. Yeah. And our sons are born 17 days apart.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's easy to remember. But before we move on, because I want to talk to you about Paul Chek too. I was blown away by your podcast with him. An incredible, incredible guy. But before we move on from Connor, I just wanted to like finish it off with saying, like, the reason why this is so important is because, Josh, you have a newborn son. Congratulations, by the way, on that beautiful, adorable doll you have. That's the newest addition to your family.
Thank you.
Amazing, man. Noah, his name is, right?
Yeah, Nova.
Nova, that's right, Nova.
Yeah.
I love the name. It's great.
Nova with an H.
With an H. Very cool. That's an awesome name, man.
Thanks.
So, we teach our children by modeling behavior. And so I just was struck by how, and I can hear my children's voice in my head. And I'm so proud that I can, because, I've taught them to express how they're feeling and express to each other how they're feeling. I can just hear my 7-year-old saying, that hurt me when you said that, and I love that. That's like music to my ears, him expressing that and then working it out with his 10-year-old brother or me or his mom. I mean, it's not something that I was taught. It's something that I had to learn. And so it's just so important, I think, because when we ignore the intelligence of our own pain, inevitably that unhealed, unintegrated trauma is going to express itself in all of our relationships, because everything that you interact with, you're in a relationship with, and eventually it's going to come out, and probably in a way that's not going to be very good for you or the person that you're interacting with. So that's why it's so important, I think, to be the one to become conscious of these things and to begin to embody the behavior you want your children to grow up and express. I just wanted to finish with that, because I think it's so important.
Yeah. And the big one from that conversation that I can pull for this conversation is that no one is immune. No one is immune. I just journaled this morning. Every morning I journal, and this is exactly what I journaled, right? The piece of truth is courage, because it stands before the ego's lie. Feel into that. The piece of truth is courage, because it stands before the ego's lie. The ego in these situations has nothing to do with the intelligence of our pain. The ego in these situations is trying to make the pain wrong.
That's right.
It's trying to change the pain, get rid of the pain, smash down the pain, fuck away the pain, drink away the pain, shop away the pain.
Deny the pain, blame it on someone else.
Deny the pain. But the truth is that courage is something we all have, but courage has to be cultivated. Courage has to be practiced. Courage, I believe, is much, much different than taking forceful action. Because taking forceful action can sometimes come from the ego. True courage comes from love. True courage comes from love. The courage to turn, be humble, listen to the pain teacher and be like, okay, what are you here to teach me? Let me just pause. What are you here to actually teach me right now? And you'll know you're on the right track because your entire nervous system will settle. You still might be hurt. You still might have upsettedness. But you'll feel a relaxation, and you'll feel the humility. And I think that's to round out that conversation with Connor. We all need to be a voice for this as men, specifically as men, because the narrative of the strong, silent type, the John Wayne, the Gary Coopers, that shit is toxic. I don't believe in the phrase toxic masculinity. I think there's toxic people, but not toxic masculinity or toxic femininity.
Yeah.
There's just certain toxic behaviors as human beings that we have been taught. And so it's our job to unlearn it. I'm wearing a shirt right now that says unlearn.
I love that.
My buddy Cal here in Texas, he has a podcast called Unlearn. So yeah, we have to unlearn everything.
It's true. I have a friend, you'd love her too. Her name is, you may have heard of her, Dr. Edith Chan.
Yeah, I've interviewed Edith. She's wonderful.
Oh, awesome. How did I miss that? Yeah, that's good. That's awesome.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she has an unlearning school.
Really?
I mean, she's got her kids they're incredible. I mean, I've seen the spoons they bend.
Oh, that's great.
She's amazing. One of my favorite guests, but back to Paul Chek, dude.
Yeah,
Man, I am a huge Neil Donald Walsh fan, and hearing Paul Chek. I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with who Neil is.
sure,
I'm not
sure.
sure if you've ever read.
Conversations with God.
Yeah.
I have the book over there. I haven't read it yet.
Oh
It's
man,
on the bookcase.
you got it. One of these days you got to grab it. It's
Okay.
I mean, I laughed, I cried. I've read and listened to every book that
Mm,
he's written in dialogue several times, but particularly the first three,
awesome.
um, because they just kind of they're like chicken soup for my soul. You know,
Mm,
they do everything for me.
okay.
But it's very much I think a language that you'll be familiar with and enjoy, and I heard you and Paul speaking it very, very much in the podcast that I listened to. I know you've done a few of them. I think the one that I really got into was All Is God, I think,
Yes.
which is what Paul says. Um, and man, I've never been so engrossed in a podcast where people were talking about God. And you guys were very much talking my language. So I pulled a quote from it that was profound to me and resonated that Paul said to you. So if you're listening and you want to check it out afterwards, you'll be able to find it on Josh's YouTube channel. But Paul was talking to you and he said, God is a word that is often overused and misunderstood. And then he quoted Rumi and he said, Rumi said, no man can get to God until he becomes a heretic, which means that you'll never find God in pages with words written on them. If you want
Yeah.
to find out what God actually is, then you have to do what's necessary to create the environment that's supportive of that. Having a peak experience is one example, like
Yeah.
being outdoors, hiking, or laying under the stars, and just realizing in a moment, oh my God, that somehow you're part of it all and that it's part of you. Remember who you are and forget who you are not. I just was, man, I got goosebumps listening to him say that and was just
Mm-hmm.
blown away. But I love that,
Yes.
and dude, so tell me, Josh, what did I mean? I know you have a relationship with Paul, and I'm sure he's a mentor of yours, and I just would love to hear how he has changed your perspective on things, and how you live your everyday life, and then like if you could uh, kind of think about how Paul has changed that for you.
The greatest gift that any teacher or mentor could give to a student is their full presence and their full truth. So that's what I've always gotten from Paul. And there have been a few times actually that I had wanted to connect with him, but it was really a feeling in my soul that I knew it wasn't the right time. I found his work in 2008 when I read like the Paleo Solution and I read How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and immediately I was like, I got to connect with this guy. This seems like the truth. But I wasn't ready yet because I needed to go through about I'm just really feeling into this about 6 to 7 more years of my own development and my own pain and my own lessons. And so when I finally did connect with him, it was 2017. So yeah, gosh, it was 9 years later. It was 9 years later that we connected. And I'd been in the podcast game for 3 years. I actually had some value to bring to him. So I think there's a really, really deep knowing that we all have about when is it the right time to truly connect with someone, or when is it like my ego wanting to shortcut my
Yeah,
own healing, or
yeah,
when is it my ego trying to shortcut my own work. And so I think on that foundation, there was a cool connection and a cool friendship that was built because I waited until I really felt it was the right time to learn from him in person. And we spent the entire day at his house, the very first time I met him. And then probably four more podcasts we've done. And each time it's like the whole day at his house. So he's so generous with his time, but it's, I believe, because he felt in me a sincereness, a sincere appreciation for his work and a sincere desire for me to be the most conscious person I can be. And that's where we established our friendship, and our I guess you could say professional friendship too. And so when I got back from my insane ordeal in 2019, actually. 2019, I got back from an incredibly challenging ayahuasca journey at a place that I can't mention. But everyone knows who it is. Everyone knows who this place is. And it was so traumatic that it actually shattered my psyche. And I thought I was pretty strong. It was like my 12th ayahuasca journey, and I'd done a lot of things. And I did not know who to reach out to. I was like, this is such a unique, special healing that I need. Who the hell am I going to reach out to? And then immediately I was like, it's Paul. Wow. So I called him. He helped me heal. He helped me understand what was there. He helped me understand how to associate with it, how to love it, how to heal it, how to process it, how to let it go. It took 18 months for me to let go of that possession.
Wow.
And so he's changed my life because he's offered me his heart. And I think that's the most, I mean, it brings up emotion in me just talking about it, because so much in our lives, especially in media and in business and in podcasting, we're always in a fucking hurry to see like what we can get out of the next person.
Yeah.
Or what's in it for me. And it's like, dude just gave. And when he gave, he turned to me and there was one day after the healing, and he said, I'm really feeling called to help you because I know that you're going to help so many other people.
Yeah.
And so he knew that it wasn't just like he was spending time healing me. He was helping to heal me so that I would also help to heal other people. And that's the most beautiful place for any connection to form is, can I give something to this person in an offering of friendship or in an offering of mentorship without having a guarantee that I will receive money back, that I'll receive something back? That's the kind of man who he is. And so all of the other conversations we've had were built upon that spaciousness of giving without having to receive.
Yeah.
And that's really like the most beautiful way I can describe it. And that's something that I strive to do in all my business relationships or podcasts. And I catch myself sometimes, like, what am I going to get out of this? And it's really not, it's not what am I going to get out of this? It's how does me spending this time with Faust, or how does me spending time with anybody help me with my mission? And my mission is clear. Like I have a paper here, and for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm in service to love, present in self-evident truth, and at home grounded in nature, allowing space for my family, myself, community, and the world to take part in my trustworthy guidance. And it's on my desk because I look at it every day, and I'm always reminding myself, okay, with whatever time I'm spending, with whatever friendship I'm cultivating, is it helping me with my mission? And so that's something that Paul has really helped me just embody. And it's a beautiful connection. And I know that a lot of people probably watch that interview where they see him and they're like, whoa, this dude's pretty far out there. And,
of course, I didn't think that, but right. I'm sure,
we're on your podcast. We're going far out. So that's how that relationship was formed. And really just the way he's changed my life is that he's reminded me that my work for me is to have my own wellness, to be well within myself, so that I can bring that to the world.
That's a beautiful story, man. And how it speaks volumes about who he is and about his heart, that he was there for you and has spent so much time with you. He's another person who's got tremendous he has his own YouTube channel, and he's an author. I mean, if you haven't heard of him, his name is Paul Chek, Chek. Check him out. Dude is on another level. He's just profound in so many areas. But that's such a cool story, man, that he was so kind to you. And man, I mean, I was going to ask you about, I know you started to experiment a little with plant medicine way as far back as 2014, but I did not realize that you had a traumatic experience just a few years ago. And so I'm curious as to what drew you to plant medicine, and then, how 5 years later you ended up in kind of trouble with it.
Sure. What drew me to plant medicine was my quest for inner peace. I think that's why most people. I would be probably 90% correct in saying that most people are driven to any kind of altered state, whether it's breath work or plant medicine or cold therapy or even like endurance
I
sports.
mean, even
Any
marijuana, I would,
or marijuana.
yeah.
Marijuana is a plant medicine. So anything we ingest or anything we experience that brings us to an altered state. And what do I mean by altered state? I mean the state of wake that we have here in society. It is essentially a state of putting people to sleep and sedating people. Our society, the way that it's functioned and the way that it's built, is to sedate and extract. So there's two core functions to the structures that we're living in. You consume so that you're sedated, and then you have your energy, your chi, your wealth extracted. And that's the normal state. So when people want to go to an altered state, they want to escape those two states. They want to escape the sleep state. So when I was drawn there, I had become, just like all of us, really affected by the state that we're in. And I had felt, and of course on top of that, there is my own story, my own generational healing. It's very layered and contextual, right? Like anytime somebody doesn't have inner peace, it's never like one thing.
No,
right?
no,
It's always an amalgam of like different things. So stack on my amalgam, and then really the path that was led for me was I had heard about plant medicine. I had done an experience in 2014 with an ex, and it was the most terrible. I mean, dude, the worst experience I ever had. I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? Early 2014, drank ayahuasca in some house in Ojai in California. And there's people freaking out. There's people singing. There's an
people
old dude
throwing
dancing.
up. What am I doing in the
people
dark?
I mean, it was just so insane. But I'll tell you, there was this one moment where I went to the bathroom, and I was sitting in the bathroom, and I'm shitting and I'm throwing up, and I felt these vines like wrapping around my leg, and it was just this, and I can even feel it now, and I do have respect, so I'm not here to demonize ayahuasca.
Right.
There was this moment where I felt a sense of love and of being held by like a grandmother that I never had.
Yeah.
And that was really beautiful. And I said, okay, maybe I'll come back and see you some other time.
Yeah.
And it was about a year and a half later that I went back, and I had some very challenging experiences, but nothing that really shattered my psyche. It was actually my 12th ceremony that like really shattered my psyche. I drank way too much medicine. Unfortunately, the place that I was sitting with was not holding the space. There was the leader who would say things like, don't think, just drink. Like basically just drink as much as you can and don't think about it. And it took me beyond, right? It took me beyond a point of reference where there was a shattering.
Wow.
And so people have to be very, very cautious of that. And in a way, in a beautiful way, it was for my own healing, because that was when I actually closed my chapter with ayahuasca.
Yeah.
I'm no longer called, and that's okay, because some people sit with her one time. Some people sit with ayahuasca one time. Some people sit 100 times. That's a whole nother conversation about bypassing and using a ceremony as a reason why they can stay unplugged from their healing.
Right.
But for me, that was the journey, Faust. It was like I got shattered. It led me to Paul. It led me to heal some things in my life that had been plaguing me for a long time.
Yeah.
To where I actually put them to bed. And here's the thing. I loved them.
Yeah.
Because I think for so many of us, any addiction, any kind of contraction, we're trying to figure out how we can kick its ass and get it the fuck out of there. Oh, this person, this thing, this job, let me get it the fuck out so I can finally be free. It's like, well, the only way you're going to be free is if you can learn how to love it.
And accept it. Yeah.
I love it and accept it. I just interviewed this guy on the show, Genius Zone, Gay Hendricks, probably one of the most intelligent, emotionally intelligent men I've ever met. And 5 years taught me about this phrase called loving your fear.
Loving your fear.
And that came full circle when I had the psychic break, and then I went to Paul, and then I got to uncover the real demon in the closet. Because the real demon in the closet was me, just like it always is for all of us.
Yeah.
We want to make it someone else, but really the coping strategies that created the demon that I possess was my choice. Yes, it was the best I could do, but also it happened because I was just trying to find meaning. We're always trying to find meaning in everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's really no meaning other than the meaning of us learning how to forgive and process and move on.
And look, no, there's no one who walks away unscathed. I mean,
No,
just ask Jesus.
no.
I'm but I'm joke, but what I'm saying is, I don't, I don't think we come here and embody, in this time, because um, we're we're in it for this perfect, existence. First of all, I think that if I believe if we're incarnating on this earth at this time, then, well, it's not just for one reason, but for most people, it's because there is still a lot to work out, and that's why we're here. And I think,
Yeah.
the good news is, I believe, as I know a lot of people do, that you get as many chances at it as you're going to need. So, in this life or the next, you're going to have to work it out. So why not
Yeah.
get a head start on it? Because it's going to
Yeah.
make it easier for you, and you're not only in your next life, but your children in this one. And that's the way I think about it. And I think a lot of people have a lot of ideas that they get from their parents, they get from religion, they get from like a lot of dogma that it paints a very narrow road for them to try
Yeah.
to find themselves.
Well,
And
it goes back to what you just said. You said in the very beginning when you asked the question, you did the quote from Paul and said a man has to be a heretic to really understand God.
that's
A
right.
heretic is somebody that leaves the dogma of a religious system. So to be a heretic, you actually have to leave a dogmatic viewpoint that's myopic, that only believes that God is a dude in the sky with a beard and you're going to go to hell if you don't worship at his footstool. So like that's something that everyone gets to look at, is whether you want to become a heretic or not, or whether you want to label yourself or not. Relationships with God can only be experienced by experiential learning.
Yeah.
You can't know God unless you have experienced moments where you have had the loving openness to connect with God. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because sometimes, whether it's my conditioning from childhood or what, I had a chip on my shoulder towards God for a long time. And I always think of God as like a father energy, which is fine because it doesn't really matter, because if God's the father, then earth is the mother, then they operate the same. Because if God and mother are from the same source point, the 0 point, well, then all is one, all is singularity, and it doesn't matter what nomenclature we use. But, and I'm going on a little tangent, but I promise I'll bring it back. So, like, one thing that I'm noticing right now in society is we have a lot of gender dysmorphia conversations. And we have a lot of, unfortunately, young men and women that are like, oh my God, am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I a watermelon?
I was speaking to a neuroscientist. Well, he's a theoreticist. He's a theoretical physicist and a neuroscientist. And he was telling me how, like, the mind has a natural inclination to attach to a strong contrast. And we got into the algorithms and big tech, and talking about how, the eye of Sauron is a great symbol of big tech, in my opinion. And but we were talking about how, of course, the algorithms that are written, and the news articles that are printed, it's all a contrast for distraction, for attention, for clicks. We've monetized that literally, and they make trillions off of it. So of course they're gonna use the outlier. They're gonna
Yeah.
use the most flamboyant representative, whether he's the tattooed
Mm-hmm.
dude, or, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, you see it over and over and over, and it's all a
Yeah,
distraction, and it's
it
all to
is.
create division, and
So what is the one thing we can do to break being distracted? We can breathe and refocus our attention on what our dream is, what we're creating in the world, what conversation we're leading. I mean, I have to be very cautious of the phone. I really do. Like, I have to be cautious of like
yeah.
how much I go on that phone, because there have been times where, see, because people write nasty messages to me all the time, and they'll be like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're not a doctor. You're not this. And I'm like, you're right. But I am sovereign in my decision making faculty. You don't have to
Right.
believe me, right? But obviously, what I'm saying triggers you so much that it's challenging your belief. I'm not
Yeah.
here to say that people should or should not get vaccines. All
Right.
I want is the choice to choose. So you take away my
Right.
choice to choose anything, and that's really the cancer that we're experiencing now as a society. It goes back to every single thing we've talked about,
Yeah.
right? Because like letting people be who they are choosing to have your own healing path, choosing to let people express themselves in a way they want to, choosing to do the work that's needed for the world, where you and I can have a conversation that maybe ruffles some feathers, but at the end of it, it's all good because we're just expressing. This camp of right and wrong is insane.
It
The
is,
camp of
man.
right and wrong is insanity.
And it's so and it's, it's been given massive amounts of steroids and fucking, like the energy that has been put into dividing and creating camps over the
Yeah.
last year and a half is, I didn't think, I couldn't imagine that it was possible 2 years ago, that this could have become such a thing. I mean, like, I talk to people who they're very sensitive to racial issues. They consider themselves progressive. I mean, that I'm people who I have admiration for, and I respect. They're artists, and they're like outspokenly pro choice, and I'm talking to them and they're cheering this mandate on that they've passed down in this city, which is fucking literally insane that they're going to mandate this. And I won't even get into all the reasons why it's insane, but I'm just talking to them and I'm like, for a person who's pro-choice, for a person who's uttered the words, my body, my choice, to
Mm-hmm.
be cheering on a mandated vaccine is the definition of effective propaganda. It's not a failure in ethics or morals. It's just a testament to how fucking easily people are duped and propagandized into thinking outside of any logic imaginable. And
Mm.
of course, I got crickets.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's literally insane.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to a point where you can say that you're pro-choice, my body, my choice, and then say you have to stick a fucking needle in you? I mean, that, in my mind, that's very similar to rape. And look, you can say that, my wife heard me say this and she was like, you can't say that. I was like, oh, bullshit, I can fucking say it. We're talking about penetrating, are we
Mm-hmm.
not? I
Sure.
was like, there's a very straight metaphor between,
Yeah.
a violation as severe as rape and then mandating this in needle that is going to pierce the skin.
Right.
They're the
This
same wavelength to me.
there's a lot to unpack here. So there's three categories that you're talking about that are literally overlapping. And the first one is segregation.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 60s there was the civil rights, and we saw black people being literally forced to drink water from a different fountain, sit this way in a bus. I mean, it's just the most heinous, largest atrocity, to treat people differently because of the color of their fucking skin. It's just unbelievable that our consciousness, that our society allowed that to occur. And I do believe that. So that's the first piece: is we're dealing with another form of segregation. That's really what this is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a shot, then somehow you're worthy and accepted by society, and then you can go to the movie theater, Faust.
Yeah.
Then you can go to work out at the gym.
Go to a restaurant.
How people can't see that right now is truly the definition of insanity. So that's the first piece. I'm going to talk about the other two. Insanity is this state of mind where normal perception, normal behavior, normal social interaction is really gone. And in the place of it, there's a mental illness. And so how does this happen? This is the second part. The second part of how segregation even comes to life in the first place is because of what's being called a hijack of the amygdala. Hijack of the amygdala. In the default mode network in our brain, and we talk about this in the Breathe, Breath, and Wellness program, how breath can turn down the volume of the DFM, the default mode network, or the default mode network. Did I say that right? You got it, right? Yeah. Default mode network. So in the default mode network, there's the PFC, there's the posterior cingulate, there's the amygdala. There's some other systems, but those are the main three. When we hold our breath, when we're in a state of trauma, when we're in a state of shock, when we're in a state of fear specifically, like imagine this phone just constantly bleeding us, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, stay in your home, wear a mask, do what you're told, stick a needle in your arm, do what we say, we know what's best for you. Over the course of time, that's how any kind of movement, whether it's Nazi Germany, whether it's anywhere, can impregnate a seed of evil inside of people's mind, and that seed of evil is just fear. So that's what's going on. So segregation is a byproduct of our amygdala being hijacked, of us being in a state of fear. And then the third thing is apathy. Third thing is apathy. Some
Yeah.
people, it's so intense, and it's so just viscerally alarming to their nervous system that they literally just turn their head. 90% of people, I read this recently, 90% of people that went through the Holocaust era, 90% of people did not believe what was going on was okay.
No.
90%. So the 10% of people that actually believed it was okay, they were seriously traumatized that it was
Right.
okay to kill Jewish people. Like just terrible. So why didn't those 90% overwhelm the 10%? It's because they fell prey to one of the lowest human emotions if you look at the Hawkins scale.
Fear.
Apathy is at a frequency of 50.
Yeah.
Above apathy is grief. Above grief is fear. You don't get to anything good until about 200 on courage.
Right.
Apathy is a vibration of 50. So segregation, which is a byproduct of our default mode network being hijacked, which is then also part and parcel to apathy. So we have apathy, we have a hijack of the amygdala, and we have segregation. That's what's going on right now. And it's playing out in theater. It's playing out in a theater in the grand scale.
Yeah.
And so how people can't see this is atrociously mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And the reason I get passionate about it is because it really bothers me, but also all I can do is just speak my truth about it. I can't grill people as to why they should listen to me.
Right.
All I can do is just share what I believe, speak when I need to speak, share when I need to share. But the rest of it, the chips are going to fall where they may.
Yeah.
But we have to come together to not beat this. That's the wrong narrative. It's like this is only a war because the media is being tangled.
That's right.
And
That's
is
right.
separating us. That's the only reason it's a war. It's not really a war. It's actually a fictitious war. We can all literally go like this. No.
Yeah.
We can just say no right now, just like Neo did in The Matrix, where he just finally had enough, and he was killed, and he came back from the dead, and he put his hand up to the bullets, and the bullets fell.
Dude.
Not because he was trying to fight Agent Smith anymore, but because that was just enough. Like,
Yeah.
enough was enough in his heart. He didn't need to fight a war about it. He just believed enough is enough. So enough is enough for segregation, for default mode network being taken over,
Right.
and for apathy to be touted as normal.
And you know, you really put it very scientifically and also eloquently. And you know, I was speaking to a friend of mine before we disagreed enough to stop speaking, but we were having a civil conversation, and I was trying to explain to her, because she was getting very triggered, and we were just conversating, and so I'm like, listen, I understand that you're frustrated and you're upset, and that if you've been living in the city, you've seen a lot of shit and heard a lot more. I was like, but I just want to propose this to you. It's very hard to discern truth through a prism of fear and anger. You know, you're very emotional about this, and I understand that. Believe me. I was like, but you know, it's very hard to see reality without a bias when you feel that strongly about it. And I said that, you know, this is a young woman who has children, young children. And I said, this, like, the way I think about it is, you know, if somebody is going to say something about my children, I'm never going to be able to hear what they're saying, good or bad, through anything but this bias of love that I have for them. So you really, you know what I mean? Like, so the good is going to be like, oh, great. And the bad's going to be like, oh, well, what are you going to do? You know, I'm always going to, whatever truth I hear about my children is always going to be tempered and distorted in a lot of ways, good or bad, by how much I love them. And so right next to that, I mean, that's a very strong emotion, but fear is also a very strong emotion. It's a survival emotion.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just asked her, I was like, you know, it's really hard to see that and discern truth if you're that of course, maybe this wasn't the right thing to say to her. She got even more emotional and pissed off and stopped talking to me, but I was just trying to encourage her to breathe and separate from the emotion to take a look at what's going on. But the conversation didn't get very far because she was angry. So,
well,
you know,
I mean, I've been there. Haven't we all been there, where we know something to be true so much that we're just like not willing to even discuss it?
Yeah.
Because there is a level to this, Faust. Think about this, man. Like, if you've done the research, like for example, how many children do you have?
2.
You have 2 children. So if somebody tried to tell you that, let's say they themselves had never been through the birth process, they've never had the experiential learning of what it's like to watch your wife or your partner birth a child. And if they sat on a pulpit and told you, well, Faust, this is exactly how birth goes, and this is exactly how it goes, you would eventually have to interrupt them and say, well, I'm sorry, sir or madam, you've never actually been through a birth process, and I have, and that's not how it works. My experience shows me differently. If they continued to bark at you and they weren't interested in hearing what you had to say, that's really just the gift of goodbye in that conversation. Because if someone's not willing to have a reciprocal conversation because they are so charged with their viewpoint being the only one,
Right.
it's not that you're being pig-headed or you're being stubborn, that you don't want to communicate with people that are like pro-vaccine, take away your medical choice. It's that they're so burdened by those 3 pieces we talked about, the segregation, the apathy, and the default mode network. They're so entrenched by that there's really, you can't help them. You see,
you're not getting any new information in there.
You can't help them come out of that. That's a journey they have to walk on their own. And it's not about you being better than them. It's not about you being more evolved. It is about you being more aware. And it is about you being more conscious, which is not a badge that you wear on your shirt that makes you better than them, but it is real. So that's what we're talking about here. And there doesn't have to be like an equal amount of time for people speaking to you that don't have the experiential learning, that don't have the rational mind to actually communicate to you from their own experience and their own intellect.
It's true. It's very true. And it's a fine line to walk, because you don't want to, you want to have a dialogue, and you want to show people,
yes,
that there is a way to have a civil conversation about this, no matter how strongly you feel about it. I feel very strongly about one way, and I am more than willing to talk to people who feel strongly about it another way, and discuss why they do. And you take away the foundation of all of this, like you said, is fear. It's fear. So it's difficult for me, because I don't have it. I have fear about some things, of course, but not what's going on. And I never have, so it's like, it's really hard for me to, I understand that I can empathize with it, because I see the kind of craziness that they're listening to and thinking that it's true. And if you thought all those things were true, I guess if you believe them, you would be fucking scared too. Be scared for your life. But
and let's break this down too, because there's rational and irrational, right?
Yeah.
If you walk by a cliff and the cliff is 100 feet drop, it's rational fear that your nervous system constricts. That's totally rational. But irrational fear is when you hop on the phone, and your feed is filled with be afraid, get the shot. Your children are being taught that if they don't wear a fucking mask, that they're endangering their grandmother's life.
I know.
What kind of propaganda brainwashing are we allowing to continue?
It's crazy.
What the fuck is going on?
And they're like, but what if? I'm like, listen, there's a what if inherent in this life. Okay. Your kid can have a cold and bring it to Nana's house.
Yes.
And if Nana is 93 years old with a weak immune system, she's going to be in trouble. I got news for you. Same thing goes with the flu. There's always a what if, but do you want to live in a bubble, or do you want to get healthy so you don't have to worry? There was 101-year-olds who beat COVID. Mm-hmm. I said the bad word. Oh, well. There was 101-year-olds who beat this thing, so it's also a matter of, like you said, having the courage to take responsibility. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I wanted to say when you said that was, I listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I was listening to a lot more for this interview. And I just kept thinking to myself, I understand why Josh uses the word courage to describe what he does, because it takes, look, I've been doing this work for a few years, and I like to consider myself courageous in going places and doing things that, I don't see a lot of other people doing who were in my life. But, you know, I was learning a lot listening to your podcast, and I was like, damn, I was starting to get a little uncomfortable. My ego's like, all right, dude, it's time for you to check out. My
What was
ego's
it?
like, maybe,
What was it?
I
What
mean,
subject was it?
like, you know what? Well, the first one was with, well, when Connor was talking about um people kind of getting addicted to this notion of growing and
Praying to the God of growth. Yeah.
praying to the God of growth.
Right.
And
Kneeling at the altar of growth and really
that's
like,
right.
so
That's
yeah,
right.
well, what triggered you about it? What was it?
Well, I was just like, is that me? And I was like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I just kept listening and breathing and and I realized that it wasn't me, but I started to question. I was like, I started to do some kind of self-reflection and think, do I? But it was a little uncomfortable. And I was like, damn, like who am I going to get to listen to this? Who's going to, I'm just thinking like, if I send this to my brother, or my buddy, they're never going to get through 10 minutes of it. They're going to get uncomfortable and change it. And I was like, I'm not going to fucking change it.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to this through because I want to learn about myself. And that's the thing. You really got to be thirsty for that. And I'm not trying to toot my own fucking horn. You know what I mean? I do stupid shit that smarter men probably wouldn't do all the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it allows me to learn about myself. And I like that.
I hear you. And with that, I will say that many of us, myself included, have fallen prey to kneeling at the altar of
Yeah.
the God of growth. It's okay that it's happened. I think why we get caught in that is because we believe in this construct of, as long as something outside of myself can guarantee a result where I'm no longer in pain, well, then I'll do whatever that thing is. And it
Yeah.
could be Tony Robbins, it could be MITT, it could be getting a vaccine, it could be getting a college degree.
Yeah.
It could be doing anything where, as long as you do whatever thing you are being told to do, you are promised a result that is free of pain. You are promised a result that is somehow going to elevate you and give you peace. And I'll tell you, if anyone ever says something like that, you know that it's full of shit, because nothing
Yeah.
is ever free of pain and nothing is ever 100% peace. Because even the most highest ascended masters in the world, look at the story of the Buddha.
Yeah.
Look what the Buddha had to go through before the Buddha died from eating bad rice. By the way,
Right.
people don't know this. So there is no guarantee in this lifetime that we are
Yeah.
going to go through an experience where, as long as we do what we're told, then we're guaranteed a life free of pain, and we're guaranteed a solution that'll deliver us from evil. It's a fucking sham. It is an
Right.
absolute sham. We have to make decisions, not just about vaccines, but we have to make decisions that are aligned with our calm confidence. There are times when we do know we do need to go kneel at an altar of humility. It's
Yeah.
not an altar of growth, it's an altar of humility. And in that altar of humility, that's where the growth comes.
Very well said. Absolutely.
Bob Marley talks about this, and also the lead singer of Rage Against the Machine, right? Which is so funny because a lot of the people that have listened to Rage Against the Machine in the 90s and 2000s, these are the same people that are saying it's okay to stick a needle in our arm and have medical segregation. And that's how you know we're in a sickness.
Yeah.
But what I was going to share was like the narrative has always been and will always be from the heart-centered rebels, and that is freedom. True freedom exists where there's no forced choice point.
That's right.
And anytime we're being forced towards a choice point or manipulated towards a choice point, we live in a time right now, Faust, where the good is being touted as evil and the evil is being touted as good. Like Cardi B with her fake tits and talking about giving people blowjobs and the wet ass pussy song and 13-year-old girls thinking that that's healthy sexuality.
Yeah.
That's being literally, she did a live stream with President Biden. Do you see? But do you see what's going on here? And this isn't to demonize her or to
No,
demonize
I
him.
mean, she's an entertainer.
This is just clear and present danger. Like,
My
and
God.
then you have people that are talking about like traditional family values of like, hey, why don't we see how we can be a pillar in our community, and how can we establish charities, and how can that? None of that is what gets clicks.
No.
None of that is what is sensationalized. So what I'm saying is like, dude, the good is being touted as evil, and the
Yeah.
evil is being touted as good. The sedation and the mind warping of our youth, of our children, is being touted as good, because why wouldn't women want to express themselves sexually? Who are you, Faust, to say that Cardi B can't talk about giving people blowjobs and wet ass pussy with the president of the United States? Who are you to say
I
that that's
mean,
wrong?
she could talk about it all day and all night. I mean, just not to my children. I
Not to
mean,
your children, but also not as a model
yeah, no.
of what is being the example for our country to
Right.
be what's
I didn't
healthy and
know
what's
that
not from.
she did a thing with Biden. I mean, that's fucking insane.
Yeah, but it's all, we're living in a simulation here, and the simulation is only going to bring us higher on the Hawkins scale. You familiar with the scale? You've heard of this before?
Yes. Yes.
So the Hawkins scale, man, at the bottom of it all, the worst possible vibration, it registers at a level of 20, and that is shame.
Yeah.
Shame registers at a level of 20. So the choice point between shame and courage is 200. Courage is about 200 as far as frequency. How is anyone supposed to develop courage and raise their frequency and come to the world with a better conversation if they're ingesting and consuming the sedative media material that is being fed to them? It's
Yeah.
actually impossible. And so we're not here to fight that, but we are here to bring awareness to it. And everyone's free to choose,
That's
right?
right.
People are free to choose, man, what they want to consume.
Yeah, man. And you ever find yourself like on your phone and you're like, why can't I stop with the thumb? I'm like, what the fuck? And I gotta like I gotta like will myself to stop. I mean, they've gotten really good at keeping you engaged, whether you're talking about Netflix or your
Sure,
phone,
sure.
the algorithms between the software and the algorithms, man. I mean, they got it. You can lose yourself in it. And that's great if you got 5 minutes, in a doctor's office that you want to kill. But I mean, they got people glued to their phone, and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You were talking to Hunter, one of our producers, and he's doing a documentary right now called "The War on Your Brain," and
Mm,
it's all about how these companies are preying on what they know to be a
mm-hmm.
weakness, and about the centers in your brain where it's the same centers where you find addiction,
Sure.
gambling. It's that they know what they're doing.
Well, they know
So
what they're doing, but it's also there's truly hundreds of millions of dollars a year that are paid by Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, Twitter, any company that's high up on the technological scale.
yeah.
They are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into behavioral psychologists. And one of them I interviewed, his name is Nir Ayal. I believe his book is called Hooked. He wrote another book as well. And he talks about exactly what you're talking about. And he says that we have in our limbic system receptors, millions and millions of receptors that are cued to what's called a variable reward. So the reason that you and I and many people consistently go back to the phone all the time is because every time we go back, we get a tiny squirt of dopamine that's a little bit different than the time before. So we're literally hijacked by the phone because these companies have invested hundreds of millions of dollars hiring people like Nir Ayal, like other behavioral psychologists, to literally study the brain to see how we can become more addicted. That's exactly
Yeah.
what food companies do when they
And
find the bliss
pharmaceuticals.
point. And
Yep.
pharmaceuticals. Food companies hire people to find the bliss point where they're getting just too sweet, but not sweet enough. Like that
Mm-hmm.
perfect point, that Goldilocks zone in soda, where people literally become addicted to soda. You see this in West Virginia specifically. It's the highest consumption rates of Mountain Dew. People's teeth are falling out. It's just
Yeah.
insane over there. But it's all the same thing. So we have to be aware of where our attention is flowing. That's truly what this is can we just be aware, and can we be like good shepherds of our attention? And that's
Yeah.
why we find ourselves going on the phone. It's like, okay, well, how can I outsource that? Like for you and I, and for people that have business on social media, can we actually invest and pay someone to do that for us so that
Yeah.
we're not in that really like it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very parasitically draining
Yeah.
environment, right? And the host is Instagram.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I just was kicked off Facebook for 7 days, and I was like, oh, whew, thank God, I needed a break.
Yeah.
It's like I was like it's like a vacation. I mean, I didn't miss it. I didn't miss it at
Good.
all. I stopped reaching for my, and I got that. I mean, I got I got kicked off for 7 days for posting a meme about Hillary Clinton. It was that, remember that meme that went around last July that was like, it said, it was like, you posted it as a comment, but it said you've received a suicide request instead of a friend request, and it had a Hillary Clinton's picture on it. I must have
No, I
been,
never saw that.
it was fucking hilarious. But I must have posted it like 7 times in a day. I must have been having a blast posting it because they were like, you violated our terms, this, and they showed me all the times I posted it. And I was like, oh fuck. What's wrong with it again? I guess it
Right.
says the word suicide, and
In my opinion, we probably have, and I'm gonna like pad this a little bit. We probably have 12 to 24 months. So we're in August. I would say by August 2023, social media will look completely different than how it looks now. It will be garden walled. It will be censored to the point where this is why I believe the powers that be will fall. And I really believe this because in their greed and in their thirst for control, they will overreach at some
oh
point,
yeah,
Faust. They will overreach. The sweet nectar of control and the bliss that comes for them with censoring people and with controlling people. Eventually, they're going to reach for that extra piece of bread, and it's going to be so obvious that they've overreached that people will have a mass exodus from these platforms.
yeah,
Their ad revenue will go down, and they'll be fucked. That's
yep,
what I pray for every day. That we all, I really mean this. Like, I pray for that every day, that we all consume things that bring us consciousness instead of sensationalized life where we are the monetization tool.
yeah,
And the only way that's going to happen is if we have conversations like this in the 100,000s
yeah,
every single week. There needs to be like 100,000 of these conversations going on like this every day, every week. Otherwise, people will be unfortunately susceptible to
yeah.
the parasitic draining. So I do believe, man, I believe they'll overreach. I believe that their greed and their lust for power will be their downfall. And when I say they, I mean the people that run Blackstone Capital. If you
That's
want to
right.
name people Illuminati,
Vanguard.
that's fine. It- Basically, the core groups, there's about 3 to 5 core groups that are multi-billion and even trillion-dollar investment groups.
Yeah.
The people that own those groups are not reported on any tax forms. They're
No,
not reported on any kind of media because they are the media. Rupert
that's right.
Murdoch doesn't own these companies. Rupert Murdoch's companies are owned by these large
That's
capital
right.
firms. And whoever owns these large capital firms at the very top, whose names will never be published,
No,
those are the people that know exactly what they're doing. But those people, and I know they're listening. I mean, they may or may not listen to us,
right.
but their henchmen will listen. And I have a message for them. I believe in the power of the human spirit. I
That's right.
believe that God will give us a path to come through this. But we're all going to have to come together. And the only way we come together is through shared suffering. I believe that that is the only way we're going to come together and really unite is if we suffer. And I think there's more suffering ahead. You know,
Yeah.
I'm investing in firearms not because I want to be violent, but because I want to protect myself and my family.
Yeah.
And we moved from California to Texas because I want to protect myself and my family. I'm not inviting
Right.
confrontation, but I'm prepared for all aspects because I'm the observer, like you. We're
Yeah.
observing, so
Exactly.
let's be prepared from the observer standpoint.
And you can be. And I think there's a big misconception that one equals the other, and it doesn't. Intent is everything, and intention sets your experience, and intention, many will agree, some may not, but I believe intention also creates, the reality that you're going to experience.
Yeah,
Sometimes we think we have an intention, but the underlying belief and thought is too powerful, and so the intention mixes with that, and the reality we get isn't exactly what we have in mind, but it's all there as a learning experience, and to help you get better at making an intention and creating your reality. That's what I think. I talk about it a lot on the show. I'm going to talk about it a lot more, and I agree with you absolutely about what you said, and that's one of the reasons why I have so much respect for you, and I was so thrilled to have you on, is because you've been fighting the good fight. I hate putting things in these dualistic terms, but you're definitely one of the good guys there. I did it again. you know, and I that's it's a tremendous thing, and not many people have the heart and the courage to just go their own path. And I, I don't mean to toot your horn, but that's how I feel. And I think it's awesome. And it really was inspirational for me to when I found you and Wellness Force and saw how you were helping ushering in this information and how much good it can do for people and the quality of their lives. And that's the most important thing, I think, is if people would stop and measure how this affects the quality of their life. That's a great barometer for not only what you're doing, but what you're allowing into your life.
I appreciate you, man. Feels good to receive that from you. And we're truly, I know this gets said a lot, we are in this together.
Yeah, I know it
We're,
gets said.
we are in this together. I think we forget that at times.
We do. I hate how
So
they hijack that statement for
yeah,
their.
so if anyone is feeling inspired, or you really want to walk a path of similar to Faust, or similar to what I'm doing, explore within your own heart, your
Sorry.
creativity, and find what it is that is going to make you feel like you're really truly contributing to yourself and to others. And there's many tools to get there. If breath work is one of them, great. Just
Mhm.
go to breathwork.io and enter the code podcast25. You can get 25% off of the program. This is a
Nice.
3-week program. Everybody can master this. Everybody can do this. And I promise you, because we've vetted it so much from all the conversations that I've had with students, and also just constantly reformatting and updating. So, yeah, podcast 25 is the code for 25% off, and then breathwork.io is the site. Faust, I would love to just gift you the program so you can talk about it and just go through the practices on
Oh,
your
that'd be
own.
awesome, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for
Cool,
having me
man.
on your show. And if anyone wants to reach out or follow, it's just wellnessforce.com.
Very cool, brother. Before you go, I got to take you far out with me. Okay.
All right, let's go.
You buckled in? All right, here,
Yep. Yep.
here we go. Um, I don't know if you noticed, if you'd have a chance to check it out, but I love UFOs, or whatever they're calling them these days. But I
Yeah.
love this notion of and the fact that I know that we're not alone. In every meaning of that expression or phrase, we're not alone. We're never alone. And so I would love to hear what you think about, and I always joke with people, like, listen, the government says it's now cool for you to believe UFOs exist. I'm like, really? I had a conversation with someone. They were like, no, no way. I'm like, then the government admitted it. I was like, did you see that article? And they were like, yeah, I saw. Shut up. but I'm like, apparently it's cool now. They stopped, the slandering and discrediting people who say that they saw a UFO, which goes to say that they just have an agenda now for what's coming. But have you ever seen a UFO? Have you ever had an experience in any plant ceremonies?
I have not seen a UFO up close, but I do remember I was on a hammock and I was integrating from a ceremony I had, and I looked up and I saw like this. I didn't know what it was. It was a white dot, and it kept bouncing around from star to star. And I thought, okay, I'm not hallucinating. That's definitely something. I don't know what that is, so I'm just gonna leave that up to the universe. But
Yeah.
I definitely have seen things in the sky before that I'm not exactly sure what they are. And also, I think it would be really silly for me to deny the fact that there's other life out there. I mean, I've read a report that there are like 60,000 suns being created every
Yeah.
single day somewhere out in the far reach of the galaxy.
Expansion.
60,000 suns. So if the universe is constantly expanding, how egoic would it be for me to deny that there's other life?
So egoic. So egoic. It boggles my mind how anyone could think that we're a fluke, or that we're, as a 250,000 year old species, that we just, happen to get here all evolved. And I'm like, did you ever think about how that may have came about? But, but yeah. So let me ask you this. What if you were leaving on a spaceship,
Okay.
and, let's say you were taking a trip with your family, and you might not be back for a while. And on your way out, you saw some ETs coming in, and they flagged you down, and they were like, this is their first time here, and it's 2021. It's today.
Okay.
And they were like, what do we need to know? What would you tell them?
Be cautious down there because a lot of people are afraid. And so when you talk to them, when you connect with them, just tune in to who they are first and then speak second. Because they know not what they do. They're not always aware of how they're being. And they don't know where you've come from. So tread lightly.
Yeah, that would be very sound advice for them, and similar to what I would say, I think too. Um, if you could whisper into the ears of every human being on this planet, let's say they all fell asleep at the same time, but you could plant a seed, whether it was a mantra or a phrase, but you could say something to them that the understanding of which, would allow them a greater expression of their life on this planet right now. What would you say to them?
Remember who you are because who you are is God and God is love. So remember that you're love.
That's true. It's very true. It's very well said. And I love that. Thank you so much for sharing it, Josh. Thanks for sharing your I appreciate your time, man. And so much wisdom. And we have it all on tape.
We got it, man. Thanks for having me, Faust.
Appreciate it, brother. Hey, have a great day. Tell your wife I said thanks for letting me have you for so long. And give Nova a kiss, and you have a great day, brother.
You too, man. Thanks for the
Appreciate
great
it, bro.
conversation. Bye.
Thank you.
Good one.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I thought it was nice, man. You got in there.
Yeah, I mean, probably have to edit some of it out.
No, it was cool, man. It was good. I mean, I had lunch.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Hold on, let me call you from my phone.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, sure.
Okay.